Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Brown. Many of you don't know me. That's because, like many of the people out there, I'm a first-time attendee. I joined Greenhouse about 10 months ago, and it has been a great adventure. I had this whole speech talking about how humbled I was, but people took my material, so I'm not gonna use that one. But what I'd like to do before I get started this afternoon with my remarks is invite up one of our sponsors. I'd like to invite Jack York up from It's Never Too Late. Jack is one of our gold sponsors, and our sponsors play a very important role in making sure this happens every year. So I'd like to invite you up to say a few words.
So I have 2 minutes. Does the walk-up time count as part of the 2 minutes, or yeah, okay. For many of you who know me well, 2 minutes in me speaking is kind of an oxymoron. But was that Nancy? Who was laughing back there? Yeah. So anyway, usually when you have this 2-minute sponsor thing, you say, "I really appreciate everything you guys do," and all this kind of stuff, and blah blah blah. And I do. But I want to politely, very politely pontificate a little bit, because I started It's Never Too Late with my brother 15 years ago. And our company is all about providing technology for people that physically or cognitively would really struggle with traditional technology. And in this 15 years, I have seen so many changes when it comes to dining and bathing and nurses' stations and staffing, and a lot of things, frankly, I don't pretend to know about. But man, it's so frustrating to me. And I say this loving what so many of you are doing, but it's almost like Bill talking about the Eden world, where it's still such a small percentage of people that really adopt it, that it is so frustrating for me to walk by a group of 20 people in mid to late stage dementia that are such cool, beautiful people that are plopped in front of a television. And I just think that the activity world and the therapy world are two things that we really try to address. And it's just remarkably life-changing to see how technology can just so dramatically impact. And it's never too late. There's a company called Connected Living. There's a company called Link Senior. There's iPads, there's iPods. But it's just a mindset from the leaders of an organization to say, man, we want to make technology be a part of changing people's lives. And it's not getting your IT people to go make the decisions. It's talking to your activity directors and your therapists and your social workers and your CNAs. And if you do that, and if you empower them to make decisions, and if you allocate 5% of your technology budget just to make people's lives better, it's just remarkable what you'll see happen. So anyway, the Greenhouse world is such a cool world. The Eden world is such a cool world. There's people in this room that have really helped make us, who we are. We have our systems in all 50 states, and really, really cool things happening. But at the end of the day, it's off-the-shelf things that anybody can do that can so dramatically change the elders that you're serving. And as I like to say to people, it's the generation of people you're serving, those are the people that invented the transistors and vacuum tubes. And that's the technology that lets me not even know what city I'm in and just talk into my phone and have it take me to the hotel that I'm at. And those people deserve a right to enjoy this stuff that they created. So anyway, hopefully that wasn't like kind of a downer, because I really like what everybody's doing here. But I get frustrated because it could be better. And anyway, I love a lot of you in the room. Thank you. Okay. All right.
So this afternoon, while you're eating, feel free to continue eating. What I want to do is talk to you about something we call the Greenhouse Advantage. And to put it in a nutshell, when we think of that, it's what makes it valuable to choose the Greenhouse Project as opposed to doing, for instance, a small house on your own. Excellent. So I was in Scott Townsley's session on creating a roadmap for the next decade. And he talked a lot about the idea of creating a core purpose, what we are, what we do. And he said one of the problems with things like vision and mission statements is there's a lot of platitudes, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't really mean anything. And so when I was thinking about the greenhouse advantage, I ran across this quote that Terry Rogers had provided us with, and I actually thought it was very clear about what it is that makes Greenhouse the brand to choose. So I know you can all read, so I'm not going to read it for you. But I thought that what I liked about this quote is it hit on some of the key elements of the Greenhouse brand advantage. The brand itself is valuable. The resources that are available, like project management and education, and of course the peer network. So this afternoon and continuing into tomorrow, you're going to have people talking to you about the different elements of brand advantage. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the amazing expanding brand sign. And I'm going to apologize in advance. I just learned how to use animations in PowerPoint. So if there's a little bit of overkill, you'll understand why. So when we think about what's going on with the Greenhouse brand and what makes it valuable, we actually think of it in three different categories, as my colleague Susan Fraser would like to say, three different buckets. She warned me she thinks in buckets. So these are the buckets we've chosen. It's the research that we provide, the reputation and the consumer demand created by the Greenhouse model. We spent a lot of time over the last year working hard to ensure that we continue to build on these things. And why do we do it? We do it to promote the brand, but really it's about ensuring that the money, the time, the energy you've invested in your greenhouse continues to be valuable. So research. I'm not going to say a whole lot about research because there's going to be a talk right after this on the value of research. We take a lot of pride in the fact that the Greenhouse model is the only evidence-based model of culture change. What that means is that there's been work done to prove that there's value that comes from the Greenhouse model. We've been really fortunate. We have been supported by Robert Wood Johnson, who's made that research possible, and we also have been supported by the Thrive research team, which, if you look here, it's kind of like the all-star team of elder research. So we've been very fortunate to work with such an accomplished group. So many of you have seen the research that's been done over the years. What's about to happen is the finishing touches are being wrapped up on 7 new studies that are really focused on something that people in this room are very concerned about. How do you sustain the Greenhouse model? How do you keep it focused? The other piece of this is going to be, how do you cost justify this? In a world where there's so much focus on reducing the cost of healthcare, how does the Greenhouse model contribute to that cost reduction? The other thing that's great about the Greenhouse model is a reputation. We are fortunate to be endorsed by a whole litany of thought leaders. I've put up 3 here. Last year we showed 10. Needless to say, there are dozens of people who are shaping the future of elder care in this country who, when they learn about the Greenhouse model, they understand what the benefits are, endorse it as the future of long-term care. The Greenhouse also, we're actually thought leaders in our own right. Work we're doing is actually something that's of a great deal of interest to people in the long-term care field. And so as a result, we speak nationally all the time. And in fact, in this past year, we've spoken in 25 sessions, in 20 different conferences, in front of 2,500 people. So we're actually helping to drive the way people think about caring for elders in this country. The other thing that I I hope everyone took away from this morning is you're part of something much bigger than your own organization. You're part of a national movement. And as a result, when people recognize the value of Greenhouse, when the media picks up on it, we all benefit. And so this year, we have actually had an outstanding year in terms of media coverage. Last year, we had about 80 mentions in the media all year. This year, we're up to 120 already. I love that last one. Finally visit a greenhouse home and it blows my mind. Which is published in McKnight's. Bill Thomas talked this morning about his book, Second Wind, and it's really an incredible vision of what, of aging in America, what it can be, what the potential is, and how people can continue to grow and thrive through the end of their lives. We were very fortunate. We were a national sponsor for the Second Wind Tour. We were part of the faculty, and what that meant was that either David Farrell or Susan Fraser were doing TED Talks at each one of these stops. So a total of 25 stops in cities across the country in front of more than 5,000 people who are advocates, supporters, and people who want to learn more about how to age in a more meaningful, humane way. We also got another bit of good news, literally. Many of you may have seen Atul Gawande's new book, Being Mortal. And if you have, if you open it to chapter 5, all of chapter 5 is on Bill Thomas, the Eden Alternative, and the greenhouse model. And what that means is when, for instance, Atul Gawande is being interviewed on Diane Reem's show on NPR, he talks about the greenhouse model. And on her show, she actually described the greenhouse model as nothing less than revolutionary. So that's the kind of press, that's the kind of media attention that your innovation is getting across the country. Now, this whole social media thing, I'm over 50, so I don't fully get it. Luckily, we have people younger than me that do get it. And it's actually really amazing to see the level of engagement we're getting with people who are interested in supporting our model and increasing engagement. You know, we're very active on Twitter. We have a very active Facebook page. So we're working really hard to continue to stay engaged with the people who have an interest in seeing this model succeed. So the third bucket of the brand value is consumer demand. And we've used this chart a lot. I'm not sure if everyone has seen this, but we did consumer research with caregivers, people who are caring for loved ones, and talked to them about the greenhouse model. And we asked them, for instance, would you be willing to pay more for the greenhouse model? And as you can see, people are willing to pay more. Would you be willing to drive further for the greenhouse model? And what we learned is people are, in fact, willing to drive further. If you really put it in context, what does this mean for you, for this audience? There's a great deal of interest, but the other thing we learned is that this translates into occupancy. And so about earlier this year or late last year, we did an operational and financial survey to figure out, okay, a lot of different things about costs, answer operational questions, financial questions, and so forth. But one of the questions we asked was, how are you doing with occupancy? So what we learned was this. The average occupancy in the greenhouse homes we surveyed was 95%. So at a time when the national occupancy rate for nursing homes is actually somewhere in the mid-80s, this is a huge, huge indication of the demand, the desire for consumers for this model. So now I'm gonna put it all out on the table. You're gonna get to know me. I tried this transitions thing on PowerPoints, animations. I'm sort of an Excel nerd, all right? So yes, it's true. When somebody needs to analyze something, they come to me. But what we do is, you know, one of the key things we do to promote the greenhouse model and try to find new adopters is we do monthly webinars. I know many people from existing organizations have actually attended the webinars as a way to learn more about what's going on, perhaps to educate a new team member and so on. But this is really sort of the lifeblood of our pipeline of leads for the greenhouse model. And what you'll see is that this year, we already have nearly 1,500 people who have attended our webinars versus 500 last year. So 3 times as many so far. Doesn't include November and December. So we're getting a huge amount of interest from potential adopters. Really feel like we're seeing momentum build. The other thing that some of you may be familiar with is the first step in working with the Greenhouse Project and getting a project up and running is we do financial feasibility modeling. It's really the first very serious step an organization takes towards building greenhouse homes. And so this year, we've actually already doubled the number of organizations that have moved into this key stage of financial feasibility modeling. So we feel very good about the direction of the brand, about the interest in the model. I'm very enthusiastic. My role is marketing and business development, and I feel incredibly positive about the future, about the demand for this model, the value it creates, and the strategic advantage it gives organizations that choose to adopt it. So I want to show a video here, and here's what I'm going to ask you. As part of this strategic planning session I was in yesterday, we talked about big, hairy, audacious goals. And everyone put up their big, hairy, audacious goals. And the ones that really resonated with me were the ones that said something like, in 10 years, the majority of skilled nursing beds in this country will be greenhouse homes. I think we've got the momentum. I think we can continue to build on it. And I'd like to embrace that as a goal. Hit the video.
Bill Thomas came to the foundation to talk about this idea of creating a different way of providing long-term care for frail elders, moving away from an institutional model into small houses.
Within a few hours of when we moved those people in there, there was a peace that descended on the house. And people were saying, it's so good to be back home.
What we look for is those ideas that are going to transform a field, that create the impetus for significant change.
It's nice to get out of the room, but it's still nice to get back home.
Doesn't that video just leave you stoked? I know I am. And next, I'd like to invite up Marla DeVries to talk about some of the other elements of the greenhouse advantage.
All right, so like Scott, I too have fun with animation and smart art, so you're gonna have to bear with us. And when I was told, if I can make it work, when I was told that I was gonna be speaking about project management and education as key markers of the greenhouse advantage in 8 minutes or less, I thought, how in the world can I talk about that? Two areas that I'm very passionate about in a short amount of time. So I feel like I need a seatbelt at this podium so I can buckle up because I've got a lot that I want to share. So project management. As Scott mentioned, project management begins with a financial feasibility process where we work with organizations to really look at how do we assess financial viability for building and operating greenhouse homes. And I'm very excited to say that there are several organizations here today, part of their first greenhouse conference, that are in the financial feasibility phase. And hopefully this is the first of many conferences to come. Project management, in addition to financial feasibility, also includes architecture and design consultation, regulatory support, leadership and team development, and working to support your organization as you develop the systems and processes to support and run the greenhouse homes. And I want to highlight a few of these areas. So architecture and design. In 2013, we worked in collaboration with Maggie Calkins of Ideas Consulting to develop a design survey for adopters looking at what has 10 years of greenhouse homes taught us in architecture and design. Those results were shared at an Environments for Aging conference in 2014 and shared with architects and designers. We also had the opportunity to use those results and work with Maggie and also with consultation from Scott Pfeiffer of RDG, architect for John Knox Village, and Rob Simonetti from SWBR, a sponsor at this year's Greenhouse Conference, and architect for St. John's and St. Elizabeth's, to develop a hot off the presses, wait for it, the Greenhouse Design Manual, yes. This is a tool for architects to understand the greenhouse design principles and how the physical environment can support and help us live out the greenhouse core values of real home, meaningful life, and empowered staff. And this was such a collaborative effort of many of our staff and the people I mentioned, so I appreciate that you applauded that. There was a lot of work that went into that. Additionally, another part that I mentioned of project management is regulatory support. So helping organizations navigate the regulatory process, including, or most especially, if you are a greenhouse that you were the first in the state. In 2014, we celebrated with St. Elizabeth's Home by getting us one step closer to adding greenhouse homes in the state of Rhode Island. In an effort to improve the quality of nursing homes in the state of Rhode Island, they developed a request for application process to award additional nursing home beds for organizations adopting culture change models. Of the 3 organizations that applied, only St. Elizabeth's, adopting the greenhouse model, was awarded the additional beds. And certainly that's a testament to the Department of Health's belief in St. Elizabeth's and also belief in the credibility of the greenhouse brand. In addition to project management, I want to spend a few minutes and talk about education. And I had on my notes that it's the secret sauce. And we've had a lot of people talk about the different secret sauce, but I thought, this is Memphis, so you can never have too much sauce. So as we look at education, something that I'm very passionate about, our goal is to equip you as adopters with the skills and tools for long-term success. We utilize a train-the-trainer approach for much of our education, looking at the greenhouse educators as really the ambassadors of our model and the ambassadors that you have among your organizations. And so I'm going to ask that all of those that are greenhouse educators that have had the opportunity to go to Cohoes, New York, and spend 5 days with us at the Eddy to become greenhouse educators, if you could stand for a moment. I'm going to ask that you remain standing for just a second. If you have attended an education session led by one of these greenhouse members, be it core team education, an informational seminar, I'm going to ask that you stand as well. So all of those that have gone through core education, go ahead and stand. If you have attended other education, perhaps provided by greenhouse staff, coaching approach to leading change, coaching supervision, if you have coaching for partnership, if you have attended a workshop, if you have attended the webinars that Scott mentioned on financial feasibility or an overview, I'm going to ask that you stand as well. And if you have worked to support the education process in your organization to make education a reality, I'm going to ask that you stand as well, which should be a lot of people. Yeah, so when we think about it, they say it takes a village, or as I like to say, it takes a network to make education a reality. So thank you all for making that happen. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the Peer Network Education Committee and for the support that they have given us. They have helped us to really develop the content for this year's conference. They also have been a great sounding board in reviewing the current educational programs that we have, as well as helping us to look forward to what are the future needs educationally that we have as a project. So, as we look forward to what lies ahead on this journey, we often hear of the challenges in sustaining the model and that the institutional dragon is kind of ever at our door. And so I like to think of, as I look ahead to 2015, I like to think of it as the year of sustainability. Recently, I came across some research that was conducted a few years back by an organization called The Forum. And they conducted a survey of over 200 businesses, not long-term care related, in the US and abroad, and they really asked some questions to look at what makes behavior change stick. So when you think about sustainability, behavior change is pretty key. And what they found was that only 14% of organizations said they were successful in getting behavior change to stick. They identified 3 phases in behavior change: the aligning phase, where you set the common vision and direction; the equipping phase, providing the tools and resources and training for people; and the sustaining phase, providing that ongoing support and reinforcement. And what they found was organizations generally devoted resources, 20% of resources in the aligning phase, 60% of resources in the equipping phase, and 20% in the sustaining phase. And as someone who has lived much of her life in that middle column, I've always been a huge advocate of equipping and educating. But what they found in terms of what has the greatest impact in making behavior stick falls in that sustaining column. And so what does this tell us as a Greenhouse Project? Well, it tells me that we need to be intentional in looking at sustainability so that we can get our own behaviors to stick. And I want to highlight 2 ways to support sustainability. The first one is aligning the legacy home to the greenhouse home. So one way to sustain the model in the greenhouse home is to create a common culture across your campus, which Dr. Thomas talked about this morning. In 2012, we piloted the Legacy Blueprint process with 2 organizations, and since that time, we've been learning a lot of lessons. One of the lessons we learned is that there is benefit to what I call a proactive approach to Legacy Blueprint. So where there's this simultaneous alignment of you're building greenhouse homes, maybe additional greenhouse homes, or you're just launching on your journey, as well as working to align that legacy home. We've also developed a tailored approach, which you can see there, to really look at how do we reach organizations in a way that meets your unique needs as an organization. We developed in 2014 a financial feasibility process for legacy homes where you can test the financial viability by looking at different staffing models and household sizes to really determine the level of alignment that's possible in your legacy home. And finally, we developed essential elements, adapting the greenhouse essential practices that are based on our core values, but looking at how those core values can really get lived out in a legacy home. And also in terms of sustainability, I'm excited to introduce in 2015, it's maybe a little bit hard to read, but the coaching approach to sustaining change. So whether you have new leadership or leadership changes, a desire to preserve the integrity of the model, a need for a momentum boost, or to reinforce skill building, the coaching approach to sustaining change is built on the research that we're gonna hear later this afternoon. So it's built on the Thrive research, the model integrity process, and the results of my interview. And it's a 3-step process offering adopters support in assessment and looking at model integrity and what's working in your organization and areas to grow, education, and the development of a sustainability action plan. So there's much to celebrate and there's much to look forward to. But don't take it from me, let's hear from one of our adopters.
Our residents, a group of about 5 to 10, began to do research and found the Greenhouse Project. They studied it and they presented it to administration. We have residents on every one of our implementation teams. They have full input, they're excited. We have a communicator that comes out, it's a newsletter that comes out monthly that gives information to our community, and it's really brought us closer together.
The greenhouse model has truly evolved over the last 11 years. The model continues to show that real home, meaningful life, empowered staff really can make a difference for older adults.
Well, the Greenhouse Project has supported me in many fashions to make me successful here at John Knox Village. We've been teaching core education the last year or so. Through the core training, we've been utilizing a lot of the methodology that Dr. Bill Thomas has taught us. We've taught residents, staff members, a lot of things. And we want them to really understand all these concepts before we build our first greenhouses.
It's great to be able to know that the regulatory concerns that have been already vetted at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, we can be able to look at what's important to the stakeholders in each state. In our state, the state of Florida, being able to have that regulatory letter understood before we walked into that room, have an understanding of what might their concerns be, and then be able to have that support there as we develop new relationships. And then to have them leave and say, what can we do to support you? This is just really well prepared, thoroughly put together, and it makes a difference, and we're a part of it. How can we help? Wow. Well, as we've been on our journey here at John Knox Village, having project guides like Debbie Wiegand and Mary Hoffman Thomas have just been incredible supports. They've become friends. Through this process of looking at our implementation teams and the support of other communities across the country that have gone before us, being able to just reach out and make contacts and reference ways in which they've learned what works, what doesn't. Having those friendships across the country, knowing how they can support us through the journey we're going through, and connecting has made all the difference with being able to have the Greenhouse Project guides working with us day in and day out.
So thank you, Marla and Scott. I used to think Marla stayed up late at night just trying to figure out how to make her art so smart. She's just, you got it down, and the animation, Scott, keep working on it. You know, we got some young folks that can teach you a few new tricks. So Marla mentioned in her remarks a little bit about the regulatory support, and Jerry Stryker in the video talked about that regulatory support that happens when you work with the Greenhouse Project team. So when we were thinking Tennessee and coming to Memphis, I thought there is somebody we need to get to speak at our conference. And it was somebody that I met when I was working with Jefferson County Nursing Home and the Ave Maria Home in the state of Tennessee. And that person is Vincent Davis. So I'm going to read his bio while he's coming to the platform. Vincent Davis is the director of the Office of Healthcare Facilities for the Tennessee Department of Health, having responsibilities that include overseeing healthcare facilities, state licensure, and federal survey and certification for both Medicaid and Medicare provider participation. Vincent has worked extensively in the private healthcare arena as a healthcare management consultant and has also served as administrative manager for medical staff affairs at major medical centers in New York and Tennessee. He received his Master's of Public Health degree from Columbia University and his bachelor's degree from Fordham University, both in New York. That's what his bio says. But here's what I want to tell you that it doesn't say. Vincent is a champion of culture change. And when I met Vincent, I think there was an idea that was sparked in my head that surveyors, those that work at our Department of Health, and providers, those of you who are in the trenches every day caring for our elders, that in our heart of hearts, we both want the same thing, and that is to improve the quality of life for those who are living and working in our homes. Vincent gets it. And I recognized from that very beginning that it would begin a partnership and a friendship that has continued to this day. So I'm thrilled that he agreed to be a part of this, and I'm thrilled for what he's going to share with us this morning. Thank you, Vincent.
Thank you, Susan. Good afternoon and welcome to Tennessee. Glad that you're all here. The mission of the Tennessee Department of Health is to protect, promote, and improve the health and prosperity of people in Tennessee. I had some slides. Is this the clicker? Will this work? Let's see. Okay. So, in doing so, that really, when you think about it, protect, promote, and improve the health and prosperity, that's what we all do. That's all of our mission. That's what you do every day. So when I was asked to speak to you from a regulatory perspective, I thought about the partnership that the state formed with the greenhouse. And I wanted to talk about the impact of what those type of partnerships do. I have to go back to about 2008 and 2009 when I first met Susan. We did not have any certified greenhouses in the state of Tennessee. And Susan came to me from a mutual friend, one who is both a state employee and one who is an Eden mentor. And Susan came to me with a concern. The concern was that Greenhouse had a provider who had both drawings and renderings and was ready to go with building a greenhouse facility. But regulations in the state of Tennessee did not allow that. I didn't know anything about the greenhouse, and I asked Susan, okay, share with me, unpack this for me, help me to understand what's so very different about the greenhouse and these other nursing homes, the 323 nursing homes that we have in Tennessee. And Susan did that. Over about 45 minutes, she unpacked the fact that they've got open hearths and open dining and open kitchens and do not have nurses stations, and what that means to those living in a facility of that nature. So she said, so can you help me? What do we have to do so that we can bring this concept to Tennessee? And I said, Susan, what kind of data do you have? Have you got some data? Because the folks that are responsible for the rules and regulations that we needed to change, those that constitutes a board of about 20 people, doctors, nurses, engineers, architects, people who are well vetted in the healthcare industry. And they love data. They thrive on data. So, Susan, what kind of data do you have? And Susan said, well, at this point in time, I don't have any codified data, but we can provide information that will help them see and understand what it is we're trying to do, what it is that we need to do, and what it is that aligns well with the Department of Health's mission. So we decided that Susan would come and present to the board, and she did for about 45 minutes. She gave the history of the traditional nursing home that she was a part of as a nurse, and she moved it forward to what the Greenhouse Project is about through story, through pictures of people who lived in the greenhouse and what they had to say about it and their experiences. At the end of that 45 minutes, it became clear that she had them hooked. What I did not know at that point and learned last night was that in some circles, Susan is called the board whisperer. And she definitely lived up to that moniker 7 years ago. So what the board did was it passed waivers for those things that the regulations would not allow so that the greenhouse could be built. That particular greenhouse was one that is in the western part of the state, here in Memphis, and we have a bookend greenhouse in the eastern part of the state, Jefferson Greenhouse. It's in Bartlett, Tennessee. The administrator of that greenhouse is here with us today, Roger Minot. Frank Cattuso, who's the administrator of the Ave Maria, is not here today. How many of you have visited Ave Maria? How many of you plan to visit Ave Maria before you leave? Please do so. It is an incredible experience. And just a commercial break, Frank Cattuso is not here with us today because as all of you know, folks from my office are in his facility. Unbeknownst to me, this was not planned. He is engaging in his annual survey. But I'll tell you that Frank, like Roger, their expectations for themselves and their staff it far exceeds the minimal expectations or the minimal standards by which we survey long-term care facilities. So because his expectations exceed what we inspect, I have no doubt that he's going to do quite well. I wanted to also share with you another partnership that the state formed with the culture change movement. I don't know if you are aware, but there was in 2011 another partnership that occurred, and that was between AHCA, the American Healthcare Association, and CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Both Don Berwick and Mark Parkinson got together and looked at where we are as a nation, looked at our shrinking healthcare dollars and said, where's the low hanging fruit? What is it that we can do to stop the siphon of unnecessary dollars being spent in healthcare? One of the areas in which they looked at was the use of antipsychotic medications. Across the state, it was understood that that's too large. You see, nationally, currently, we are about 19.4%. That means that 19.4% of residents in long-term care facilities are being prescribed antipsychotic medications. In the state of Tennessee, currently, that number is about 22.7. In this region, which is Region 4, it comprises 8 states. Those are Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Our regional, the average or the percent, the prevalence of antipsychotic medication use in our region is about 20%. So it's a little bit higher than the national average, but it is certainly lower than the average of what we're using here in Tennessee. So Tennessee is very active in engaging stakeholders in these partnerships. We currently are in a partnership with a coalition of stakeholders, which includes the Nursing Home Association. It includes our QIO, QSource. It includes Eden Alternative. It includes the State Department of Health and the State Medicaid Agency. Because the directive from the federal level and from ACA to the nursing homes was to reduce medication usage from its current place in each state and each nursing home by 15% by the end of 2012, a lot of entities got busy in order to meet that mandate. We were no different. The nursing homes got busy with their nursing, the Tennessee Nursing Home Association got busy with their nursing homes. The QIO got busy with those poor performing nursing homes. And the state of Tennessee said, what are we going to do in that regard? How are we going to join in that initiative to help reduce the antipsychotic medication use in Tennessee? In working with Eden Alternative, we reached out to Eden because we know that they've got a history of working with residents who live with dementia. The goal was to reduce antipsychotic medication, unnecessary use of antipsychotic medications in residents living with dementia. Not those that have other needs for antipsychotics, those being those with bipolar disease or Tourette syndrome or schizophrenia, but those that do not necessarily need to have antipsychotics in their lives. So Eden Alternative and the state of Tennessee joined forces, partnered. We submitted a grant application to the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare and Medicaid Services for $370,000, and that grant was approved. From that grant, the state of Tennessee, again partnering with Eden, conducted 3 days of conferencing in all 3 grand divisions. In those conferences, Doctors Bill Thomas, Al Power, and Court Nygaard shared with the participants through story, through interactive dialogue in neighborhoods, and through role play what it means to live with dementia and what that means for not only the elder living with dementia, but for the family members of those elders. That was in Q3 of 2012. So we got in on the tail end of the initiative requiring that Tennessee reduce antipsychotic medication use by 15%. At the end of Q3 2012, we had reduced antipsychotic medication use by 7.6%. That was prior to the training sessions that were done in partnering with ACA and Doctors Bill Thomas, Al Power, and Court Nygert. By the end of 2012, the Tennessee had reduced its antipsychotic medication use by 9.3%. When we looked at that, we said, well, what happened? We expended all of this money, we expended all of this energy and effort, and did we do something wrong? Was it not sufficient? But then we realized that those things that the participants went back to their facilities and put into operation, it would probably not be seen until the next quarter. I mean, it was not going to happen in that 3 months. So in Q1 2013, when we looked at those numbers again, we did reduce unnecessary antipsychotic medication use in residents living with dementia by 16.7%. I'll tell you that when this initiative started back in 2011, Tennessee's antipsychotic medication use was 30%, relatively high. As we have progressed from Q3, Q4 2012 down to what we currently have data for is Q2 2014, we have reduced antipsychotic medication use, unnecessary antipsychotic medication use in residents living with dementia by 24.2%. CMS and ACA's current initiative nationwide is reduction in antipsychotic medication use by 25% from where the state and nursing homes originally started. So they're looking back to 2011. And they're expanding that initiative to 2016, a reduction of at least 30%. So where we currently sit, based on the partnerships that we have formed and what we've done up to this point in time, we are ready to hit the 25% reduction virtually today. Again, because Q2 2014 has us at 24.4% reduction. Just a few other slides quickly. This is what it looks like for the region. The dotted line shows the 6 states that happen to be above the national average of 19.4%. There are 2 states in our region, North Carolina, South Carolina. Anyone from North Carolina or South Carolina here? Congratulations. They're below the curve. So whatever it is that you all are doing, you should publish it because it's quite impressive. If we look across the nation, these are all the states and their antipsychotic medication use. Hawaii is number 1. They've got 46 nursing homes in their state or their territory. Notice that Tennessee is 45 out of 50. So our rating is low. This is something that has caught the attention of everybody in state government. And it mirrors the health index of folks in the state of Tennessee. we are 46 out of 49. And just in terms of a state and population, some of our issues are diabetes, obesity, heart disease. Watch that needle move. We are partnering with many partners to move the needle on the health indices here in the state of Tennessee. And again, we are partnering with many because our mission, as with yours, I'm sure, is to protect, promote, and improve the health and prosperity of those in this state. So, partnerships are important. Well, I've come to the end of my presentation. I hope that this gives you some indication as to what can be accomplished when many are working to achieve the same goal. I heard a lot in this morning's session about those providers who want to engage in greenhouse, who want to bring online a greenhouse, at least one greenhouse in their state. Some who are struggling with how to do it. I recommend that you reach out to your state survey agency as a start, that you reach out to your legislators, that you reach out to your nursing home association. Again, you've got a product, and if you don't, you've got a good product, and if you don't share the value of your product with others and get them to partner with you, it's just a product with potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. I think that was a very powerful story about how we can achieve more by viewing people as partners, organizations as partners, than we can separately. So now I have the great pleasure of introducing our next speakers. You heard a little bit about them in the video that Marla showed. We actually have the Hans, who were the driving force behind bringing greenhouse homes to John Knox Village. So at this point, I'd like to invite Dave and Twyla to the stage.
Well, we look out there at you all. You're young and vital, hardworking. Well, we're the other side of it. We're old, we've lost our teeth and most of our hearing and half of our brain. But we're honored to be here today just to share as some of those that you all serve, just to let you know how much we do appreciate what you are and what you do and what you mean. Since we don't hear very well, we are trying to talk loud enough so that we could hear if we were out there. So if you can't hear, if you'll raise your hand, she's going to hit me and I'll talk louder. But anyhow, I imagine that all of you here today have people you know back in your home communities that are at the very same place where I was just about 3 years ago. Because until the summer of 2011, I really did not believe that greenhouse was the best way for an organization to go. I didn't think it was the way John Knox should move, and I didn't think that for 4 reasons. First of all, I felt the greenhouse system and what you all were doing was going to cost too much money. And secondly, I had doubt if the greenhouse organizational style would be accepted by the staff and the employees and the nurses that work at John Knox Village. And third, I questioned if food preparation in each individual home would be healthy or financially worthwhile. And finally, I had concern about paying some outside organization known as Greenhouse to come into Pompano and tell us how to build our nursing home. I didn't really think it was right to oppose something that I really didn't know that much about. Twyla served on some committees, and she said Greenhouse was a good idea, and so the two of us talked about it and decided the thing we should do is go visit greenhouses. So we made the decision that we would go across the southern part of the United States and we'd look at greenhouses and judge for ourselves just how successful you guys were. I really appreciate Bob Sharman, who is our John Knox administrator, because he encouraged us to go and visit greenhouses. I appreciate the fact that he made suggestions of questions that we ought to ask so that we could kind of know what we were finding out and what you all are all about. And so we developed a fairly lengthy questionnaire, and we started out to visit 7 nursing homes across the southern United States. I'd like to thank those homes that we did visit. Buckner Westminster Place in Longview, Texas. The Greenhouse Cottages of Wentworth Place in Magnolia, Arkansas. St. Martin's in the Pines in Birmingham, Alabama. There you go. And and by the way, your high-rise we liked, you know. We're building one 7 stories high. See how you impressed us? And the Greenhouse homes at Traceway in Tupelo, Mississippi. You know, when we left that 4th home in Tupelo, I said to Twyla, we don't need to go see the other 3. I believe the Greenhouse works. My concerns had been addressed as we visited with Shabazim, with guides, administrators, and kept hearing over and over how thrilled they were with the quality of support and help and love and care that they gave to the elders like us, and how well Greenhouse worked. Last summer, we visited a 5th greenhouse. It's the Showalter Homes in Harrison, Virginia. It's part of the Mennonite movement, and we met a Shabazz there that was the most live wire Shabazz I think I've ever met. Melissa Thompson. Yeah. And I was drawn to her because she was where I was. She didn't want to work at this bunch either. She joined up and signed up about the last minute before they closed off the opportunities. And she said, I'm so glad I did. Well, the more I've studied, the more I've become convinced that the greenhouse model will work at John Knox Village in Pompano Beach and about anywhere else that's willing to give it a try. I believe our current nursing home at John Knox is excellent. We have a 5-star rating with the federal CMS. In my opinion, what we have at John Knox is a Cadillac among the nursing homes in Broward County. But I also believe that the greenhouse facility we are now going to be building will be not just a Cadillac, but a Rolls-Royce in our community. You know, Twyla and I are both pleased that we made the decision 11 years ago to move to John Knox Village. And we're equally pleased that we have the opportunity one day, if we live long enough, to be equally blessed to live in John Knox Village's wonderful Woodlands greenhouse home. And I look forward to that. Twyla?
I was asked to speak at the groundbreaking for our greenhouse homes because of my experience with my mother, through all the levels of care at our CCRC community at John Knox Village, and my dream for my own future, which someday may include a stay, either short-term or long-term, in the Woodlands. Our present skilled nursing health center does have a 5-star rating, but the building itself has aged, the shared rooms are crowded, and the philosophies of care have changed. I am proud to say, as you have already heard, it was our village residents who recognized the benefits of the greenhouse model and encouraged our administration and our board of directors to give us a new health center using the greenhouse model. Our leadership, staff, and numerous residents have visited greenhouse homes, have seen them work, and believe wholeheartedly that this model is the finest program of care we can offer our residents, our staff, and our community. We are building a beautiful 7-story building. We're excited at its beauty, and because we know that we will have a private room with private bath. But the real story isn't just a beautiful building, although that's going to be very exciting. The real story is what will happen in that building. The real story is the dream of each person who enters through those doors for care. Those who come for short-term rehabilitation after surgery or a fall will enter into a home atmosphere where they will receive care based on their preferences and needs. As John Knox residents, we know that if we move to the Woodlands permanently, we will make our room feel like our home. We can bring some of our personal belongings that will help us remember our stories about the life we have lived. When our family visits, they can sit down and eat with us as part of a greenhouse family. Or we can go with friends down to the bistro for ice cream and a sandwich and enjoy the beautiful patio. Most important of all, the greenhouse home design centers around a home atmosphere where the same staff cares for us every day. They will help us be part of a family, and more than merely staff, they will become our friends. They will strive to keep us involved in meaningful activities, enabling us to live the richest lives possible. They will help us stay ambulatory as long as we possibly can and out of that dreaded wheelchair until we have no other choice. Honoring our varied faith traditions, I would like to request that we lift our greenhouse team and especially our Shabbazim in prayer to honor these who have chosen to spend their lives caring for the elderly in this special way. Would you pray for us and our community opening new greenhouse homes, that we would choose the best individuals for this challenge, those who have a desire to create a real home that truly meets the unique needs of its elders who live there. Dr. Bill Thomas, founder of the Greenhouse Homes Project, states that as we age from child to elder, we must adapt to change. It was this adaptation that brought my mother and many of us to John Knox Village. We are grateful that the Woodlands will be there if we need care. And so I want to say thank you to Drs. Bill and Jude Thomas, who have worked for over 25 years to create a better elderhood for all of America, and for their collaboration with Dr. Alan Powers and the Eden Alternative Principles for helping us understand how we gain insight into each individual elder's needs for their sense of well-being. Thank you to the residents of our community who understood that there was a change in the culture of the nursing home industry that cried out for a better design for health care in America and led us to the Greenhouse Project. Thank you from the residents today and in the future to our President, Bob Sharman, our CEO, Jerry Stryker, and the Board of Directors of JKV for listening to your residents and believing that elders still have something to offer in creating this dream. We thank them for being brave enough to step out on this bold and exciting adventure, embracing this innovative creation we're calling the Woodlands. My last thank you would go to the participants in the Greenhouse Peer Connection webinars. I have learned so much from the live sessions as well as those that are archived. I believe that we build a stronger greenhouse community when we share our strengths as well as the areas where we know we don't quite have it right, so that we can support each other and help each other in our journey. Our bonding together as a community across this country will touch the life of each elder who chooses our homes for their care. We will serve as a model of how elder care should be done, leading with heart and soul.